The night outside was cold enough to make the windows sweat. Snowflakes drifted down the streets of Seoul, landing softly on the glowing sign that read Han River Pearl. Inside, the restaurant glimmered like a secret. Every plate was set perfectly. Every sound, the soft clink of chopsticks, the low hum of jazz carried a quiet tension. At the corner table sat Mr. Kang. His black suit looked untouched by the world. His hands were steady, his eyes unreadable. No one in the room dared to speak too loudly near him. Even the air seemed to move carefully around him. Aisha Carter, the new waitress, moved between tables, holding a silver tray against her chest. Her dark hair was tied neatly, her steps graceful but cautious. It was her third night working there, yet she already noticed the strange rules. No one looked Mr. Kang in the eye, and no one ever asked about the men in black who sat by the door. She placed a cup of green tea on Kang's table. He didn't look up. "Thank you," she said softly. No response, just a faint nod. She turned away, not realizing that at that exact moment, 5 shadows were crossing the street outside. The restaurant's door opened with a sharp click. The sound cut through the room like a knife. A group of 5 men entered, their boots wet from melted snow. Each one looked different, but the energy they carried was the same: danger. The host bowed nervously. "Do you have a reservation?" The tallest one, a pale man with a jagged scar down his cheek, didn't answer. His eyes swept the room until they landed on Mr. Kang. His lip curled slightly, almost a smile. "We're here for dinner," he said in English, his tone mocking. Aisha froze near the bar. Something about their formation didn't feel random. One by one, they spread out 2 to the left, 2 to the right, 1 near the window. She had seen this kind of movement before, years ago, somewhere far from Seoul. Kang kept eating, as if unaware of the storm about to hit. His bodyguards tensed but didn't move. They waited for his signal. Aisha picked up a tray from the counter, pretending to serve another table, but her eyes were fixed on one of the newcomers, a short, broad man reaching into his jacket. Her heart skipped. She knew that gesture. Under the tablecloth, Kang's hand shifted slightly, brushing something metallic near his lap. Then, the room went dead silent. One of the 5 men, the scarred leader, said in a thick accent, "Mr. Kang, the white dragon finally eats among common people. Brave of you." Kang slowly lifted his eyes. "Leave," he said quietly. The leader smirked. "Or what?" Before Kang could respond, a sudden flash burst from the man's jacket, the unmistakable gleam of a gun. The first shot shattered a wine bottle behind Kang. The second hit a plate. People screamed and ducked for cover. Tables crashed, glass flew, chaos erupted. But through the noise, Aisha didn't scream. She dropped her tray, eyes sharp and calculating. Her hands moved to the side of her apron, the movement so fast it didn't match the panic around her. When the third shot came, she was already moving. The tray she dropped wasn't empty, it held a metal teapot. It spun across the floor, colliding with the attacker's leg. His aim faltered, the bullet grazing the wall instead of Kang's head. Kang turned his gaze toward Aisha, for the first time truly noticing her. She stood tall amid the chaos, breathing steady, her posture strange for a waitress. Her eyes burned with something hidden, something she had buried long ago. The restaurant was no longer quiet, but somehow, in that moment, Kang understood one thing: this woman was not who she seemed. Hours before the gunfire, Han River Pearl looked peaceful, too peaceful for what was coming. The afternoon sun had dipped low, washing the city in golden haze. The restaurant's windows glowed like warm lanterns. Inside, staff hurried about, setting tables and polishing glasses. Everything gleamed, but the air carried a silent unease, the kind that only existed when powerful people gathered. At the back table, Mr. Kang was already seated. Though the restaurant hadn't yet opened, he always came early. It was his way of showing control, to be first, to observe, to remind everyone that he owned both the room and the silence inside it. He read a folded newspaper, but he wasn't really reading. He was thinking about business, betrayal, and the names that no longer answered his calls. One of them was Min Ho, a man he had once called brother. Find him, Kang had ordered earlier that week, but his men hadn't returned with answers. Just whispers. Whispers that Min Ho had joined the others, the ones who wanted Kang gone. Kang set the paper down and exhaled. Loyalty, he murmured, dies faster than courage. In the kitchen, Aisha Carter was tying her apron, listening to the staff chatter. They spoke fast Korean mixed with English phrases. She didn't understand all of it, but she caught enough to know what they thought of her. The new girl doesn't talk much, one cook said. She's too calm, another replied. People like that, they've seen things. Aisha ignored them. Her hands were busy, wiping down trays, organizing silverware. Her movements were exact, almost rehearsed. She had been trained to notice everything: exits, reflections, hands in pockets, shoes that didn't match the room's purpose. That habit never left her, no matter how much she tried to forget who she used to be. She caught sight of Kang through the kitchen's small window. He looked unbothered, but she sensed something else behind his stillness, a quiet kind of loneliness that powerful men carried when they knew betrayal was near. She had seen that look before. It belonged to soldiers waiting for ambushes, to men who trusted no one but still hoped to be surprised. Later that evening, the restaurant filled with sound, soft laughter, the clink of plates, the smell of grilled seafood. Kang's bodyguard stood by the entrance, scanning every face. Nothing seemed out of place, yet something didn't feel right. Outside, a black sedan rolled to a stop. The streetlight flickered, reflecting on its tinted windows. Inside sat 5 men, silent, watching. The driver, a small man with a cigarette resting between his lips, finally spoke. Once we walk in, he said, no turning back. The man in the front seat, Min Ho, exhaled smoke and stared at the restaurant's glowing sign. I'm not here to turn back, he said quietly. I'm here to finish what he started. Back inside, Aisha was carrying a tray of side dishes to a family seated near Kang's table. A little boy accidentally dropped his spoon, and as she bent down to pick it up, something outside caught her eye through the window. A dark reflection, a flash of metal under a man's coat as he stepped out of the car. Her heart tightened. She knew that stance, that rhythm of movement military. Not a simple thug, not a drunk, someone trained. She placed the tray down and went to the back kitchen, pretending to fetch more napkins. But her mind was racing. She looked around. There were no emergency exits unlocked, no guards at the rear door. The staff were laughing, unaware that death was already walking toward them. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the knife on the counter, not to use it, just to remember the weight. The familiar feeling steadied her breath. She slipped the blade back down, unnoticed. The head chef called her name, snapping her back. Carter, you good? She forced a small smile. Yes, chef. He nodded and turned away, but her eyes returned to the front through the gap in the kitchen door. She could see Kang, still seated alone, sipping his tea. Outside, 5 men stood beneath the falling snow, watching the entrance. And for the first time that evening, Aisha whispered to herself, not again. The night had deepened. Snow kept falling, soft and endless, wrapping Seoul in a hush that didn't belong to the living. Inside Han River Pearl, the light was warm, but the silence had teeth. Aisha carried a tray of steaming bowls through the dining area. Her eyes swept the room, not out of curiosity, but instinct. The rhythm of the guests, the spacing of tables, the distance between her and the main door, she counted it all without thinking. She noticed something else, too. The doorman, who always stood tall near the front, was gone. His station was empty. Her fingers tightened around the tray. Something was wrong. Mr. Kang sat in his usual spot, speaking quietly with one of his lieutenants. His tone was calm, but his eyes were sharp, fixed on his tea instead of the man's face. "2 of our men went missing this morning," the lieutenant said, voice low. Kang didn't look up. "Minho's work?" "Most likely." Kang stirred his tea once, then said, "Then he's already here." The lieutenant hesitated. "Should I call for backup?" Kang shook his head. "No, I want to see who walks through that door first." That was how he ruled, not with panic, but with patience. In the kitchen, steam rose from pots, and the hum of the vent drowned out the outside world. The back door opened slightly. A man wearing a delivery uniform stepped in, carrying a small crate. His face was half hidden beneath his cap. The sous chef frowned. "We didn't order anything tonight." The man smiled faintly. "It's from Mr. Kang's supplier." He set the crate down near the counter and left without waiting for a signature. Aisha turned her head just in time to see a red light blinking faintly from beneath the wooden lid. A tiny pulse, subtle, steady, unnatural. Her heartbeat slowed. She stared at it for 3 seconds, long enough to know it wasn't a delivery. She turned off the faucet and wiped her hands, pretending calm. "Chef," she said softly, "I'll take this crate to the storage room." He nodded, not noticing her tone. "Fine, but hurry." She bent down, lifted the crate gently, and carried it through the side hallway. Every step was quiet, deliberate. Once she reached the corner, she crouched and slid the lid open. Inside were folded napkins, and beneath them, a small black device no larger than her palm. A detonator, disguised but not hidden well enough for her eyes. "Someone's preparing a distraction," she whispered to herself. In the dining room, Kang's table had become the quiet center of gravity. The guests around him laughed and talked, unaware that the men who had entered minutes ago weren't customers. They sat at 2 separate tables, pretending to browse menus. Their eyes, however, weren't on the food, they were on Kang. Minho sat near the window, his reflection caught in the glass. He looked older than before, his expression harder. Yet, behind his calm, anger pulsed like a second heartbeat. He watched Kang's profile carefully, as if measuring the right second to strike. Aisha returned from the back, face composed, holding an empty tray. She scanned the tables again. Her eyes brushed over Minho, then quickly away, but she'd seen enough. His body language, the stillness of his shoulders, the controlled breathing, it was all wrong for a diner. She glanced at Kang. He hadn't moved, but she could tell he felt it too. He spoke without turning. "You see it too, don't you?" Aisha blinked, caught off guard that he had noticed her watchfulness. She nodded slightly. "Yes, sir." Kang sipped his tea. "Stay close." Her pulse quickened. She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. Minutes stretched like thin wire. One of the rival men excused himself to use the restroom, slipping something from his sleeve as he passed the kitchen. Another reached under his table, pretending to tie his shoe. Aisha's eyes caught both movements. Her hands brushed the cloth at her waist, where she'd quietly hidden a small paring knife. Her mind was racing now. 5 attackers, 1 bomb, too many civilians. If they moved all at once, there'd be no escape for anyone. She looked back toward the kitchen door, where the red light of the hidden device blinked faintly through the crack. The pulse grew faster, steady, deliberate, counting down. She inhaled once, slow and deep. Every part of her body went still. And then, from outside, came the distant crunch of boots on snow. 5 more steps drawing closer to the door of Han River Pearl. Inside, the trap was ready, and everyone was standing exactly where they were meant to be. The clock above the bar struck 9. The sound was small, but it sliced through the air like a warning. The front door of Han River Pearl opened again. Cold air rushed in, carrying flakes of snow and the smell of metal. The 5 men who had been pretending to dine suddenly rose from their seats at once. Their movements were quick, rehearsed, too smooth for ordinary customers. One flipped the table. Another drew a pistol from his jacket. The guests screamed and ducked under chairs. Plates shattered. Kang didn't flinch. He stood slowly, brushing his hands together, his eyes locked on Min-ho. "So," Kang said softly, "you brought friends." Min-ho smirked. "You always told me to aim higher." Before Kang could respond, a gun fired a sharp crack that silenced the room. The bullet tore through the wall behind him. His guards reacted instantly, pulling weapons, but the rivals moved faster, spreading like a pack of wolves. From the corner, Aisha ducked behind a table. Her mind worked faster than fear. The device she'd found in the kitchen, it wasn't meant to kill Kang directly. It was meant to trap him. A distraction before the real strike. She scanned the floor, 2 guns near the front, knives near the bar, and one man Igor blocking the exit with a sawed-off shotgun. No escape. Kang's bodyguards fell one by one, not dead, but disarmed, shot, stabbed, or stunned. Min-ho moved toward Kang, gun raised. "Your time's over," he hissed. And that's when Aisha moved. She didn't shout. She didn't warn anyone. Her body just reacted, years of buried training waking like a storm. She grabbed the nearest serving tray, flung it with perfect aim, and it struck Reed's wrist, sending his weapon clattering. Before he could recover, she spun low, swept his legs, and slammed him to the floor. Everyone froze for a second, even Kang. Luca lunged at her with a knife. Aisha sidestepped, twisted his wrist, and used his own momentum to throw him into a table. The sound of splintering wood echoed across the room. Min-ho stared in disbelief. Who the hell is she? Kang's gaze shifted, calm but curious. Not just a waitress, he murmured. Aisha stood in the middle of the chaos breath, steady, eyes cold. Around her, the once elegant restaurant was now a battlefield. And though 5 men had come to end one life that night, they had no idea that another kind of danger had just awakened among them. The air inside Han River Pearl had turned thick with smoke and fear. Tables were overturned, glass littered the floor, and the once soft jazz music now hissed from a broken speaker. Aisha stood in the middle of it all, chest rising and falling, eyes locked on the remaining attackers. Her uniform was torn, one sleeve ripped, but her stance was steady, feet grounded, arms relaxed, weight centered. The way soldiers stood before a strike. Igor reloaded his shotgun, his heavy boots thudding toward her. "You think you can fight us alone?" he growled in broken English. Aisha didn't answer. She watched his shoulders, not his eyes, then moved. Her body dropped low as he fired, the blast shredding the wall behind her. Before he could pump another shell, she was already inside his guard. A sharp elbow to the jaw, a twist, then the butt of his own gun slammed into his ribs. He collapsed, gasping. Reed tried to rise, but Aisha's foot caught his wrist. The knife he'd hidden clattered away. With one motion, she disarmed him completely, eyes calm, not angry, not afraid, just focused. Min-ho, seeing his crew fall apart, turned his gun toward her. "Who sent you?" he demanded. Aisha's tone was even. "No one. I came to serve dinner." Her hand flicked a broken plate toward him. It wasn't meant to hurt, just to distract. In that heartbeat of hesitation, Kang moved. The boss was no longer calm. His patience had reached its end. He crossed the space between them faster than Min-ho expected, knocked the gun away, and slammed his palm into Min-ho's throat. The rival boss stumbled, coughing, his eyes wide with disbelief. Kang looked down at him coldly. "You were family," he said. "Now you're a message." Aisha turned away as Kang finished it. She didn't need to watch. She'd seen enough death for a lifetime. Minutes later, silence returned. The sirens outside grew louder, police. Or maybe more syndicates coming to clean up what was left. Kang stood beside her, adjusting his cufflinks as if brushing off dust. He studied her quietly, You move like someone who's killed before, he said. Aisha didn't answer. She just began picking up shattered dishes from the floor, one by one. Kang stepped closer. What are you really, Miss Carter? Her eyes met his for the first time, calm, steady, unreadable. I was someone else, she said softly. A long time ago. He nodded slowly, reading the truth in her tone. Then maybe it's time you remember who that was. Aisha glanced toward the kitchen. The bomb she'd found still blinked faintly. She walked over, crouched, and disarmed it with 3 quick motions. No hesitation, no wasted movement. Kang watched, impressed. You saved my life, he said. She shook her head. I just didn't want to die serving tea. For the first time that night, a faint smile touched his lips. Outside, blue lights flickered against the falling snow. Inside, the wreckage gleamed like a battlefield after the storm. Aisha straightened her apron, stepped toward the door, and paused. Mr. Kang, she said quietly, this place isn't safe anymore. He nodded. Neither are you. She turned slightly, her expression unreadable. I never was. And with that, she walked out into the cold night, the waitress, who wasn't just a waitress, leaving behind 5 bodies, a broken syndicate, and a man who finally understood that power doesn't always wear a suit. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for part 2.